Jim?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session concerning legal matter.
Second. All in favor? I get to vote with Mark outside. All right, executive session.
There's something we have to do here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are here today for a budget work session, and we will start off with personnel services and Fringe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Welcome to the first workshop of FY 2019's fiscal year budget. For the viewing audience and any questions you may get from your constituents, the budget is on the website. It's right on the front page, so anybody can look through there to review it, ask questions. Feel free, if there's any questions, they can email those to me at hunter@lewistonmaine.gov. And you can address questions if you have ideas, and anything that I get from an email, just so as a reminder, I'll bring forward to you. Depending on via email, we could do it at the beginning of the workshop, whatever, depending on how the information comes through. The other reminder is Monday night's school workshop is at 6 o'clock, not 6:45. That's on the back of the cover. And as we talked about, both with the old counselors and the new counselors, anything that we talk about that you want to kind of put on the list to revisit, just let me know. I'll keep that running list. And likewise, any questions, I'll keep a running list depending on how the answers go. I may email out a group of answers, or we can talk about it at the next workshop. So without further ado, the first subject matter is personnel services. They begin on page 20. So you can see this is kind of the organizational count for the city of Lewiston right now. We are projecting to have 352 full-time equivalents. That includes not only general fund, but our utilities, as well as a handful of our special revenue funds, community development, the tax increment financing district, the lead program, and so forth. This budget, as it stands presented to you, does not include any of the new positions that the city administrator mentioned during his presentation as far as new program and services. It is strictly the existing table of organization that the city has now. So we do have, you will notice in FY18, we did have some new positions added. There were 8 added in FY18, 4 firefighters. We had 3 of the sewer positions added for 2 water and sewer service people, an asset management technician regarding the EPA administrative order, and then we did have 1 economic development position that was included as well when the Lewiston Auburn Economic LAGC, that's what I'm trying to spit out, did not get funded. There are 13 requests for new full-time positions reflected through the program and services. They are listed on page 18, but I can kind of summarize them here. They include the assistant city clerk, a civil document server for the police department, a police fleet and IT coordinator, a fire battalion chief, which also that amount, just so you know, because it looks rather large compared to some of the other ones, it includes that person's support vehicle too. So that's why it kind of sticks out a little bit further.
Which is about how much?
That's about $45,000 of that.
So what's the typical benefit ratio?
Typically, most of these positions were funded at a family level of health insurance, so that's about $18,000. If they are public safety employees, they're running about 10.5% for Maine State retirement. Otherwise, we're looking at about 6% for deferred comp, and then you have Social Security and Medicare for the non-public safety employees, the 7.65. So, I mean, you're depending on, because some of those are percentage based, so it's not a flat amount. It's probably on average a good 30,000, 35,000 plus. It includes a planner, a PW senior principal clerk, which we'll talk about a little bit more once we get into the public works discussion. It includes an equipment service person for municipal garage, a maintenance worker for the buildings, a field officer for social services, a rec programmer, a library technician, and 2 part-time summer help people to help for the building maintenance division. So that's kind of the new program and services requests.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So where it says recreation 12-passenger van,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I just want to bring up there is the school department just ran into issues where they bought vehicles that required people to get specific licenses in order to be insured. So I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of that in terms of making that request.
Yeah, we are.
Great.
But I'll make a note. So if you look on page 21, you will see all of the divisions listed for regular salaries. So with the exception of our patrol unit and our police supervisory unit, all of the salaries reflect the settled contracts and the prescribed anniversary increases based upon those contracts. Those are already built into the FY 2019 budget. So you will see that. So looking at that, we are just shy of $400,000 or 2.5% increase for our regular time. When you're looking at comparative information for FY 18, you will notice not all the salary reserve has been allocated out. That is consistent with prior budgets, so if something looks out of whack, that's probably what you're looking at. When we looked at last year's budget for the benefit of the new council, you will notice on the last division on page 22 of the salary reserves, you'll see some big credit balances as you kind of go across. Last year was the first year, or actually this year now, last year's budget, is the first year that we consolidated all of the overhead charges for the utilities and put them all in the salary reserve. So the salary reserve is really made up of 2 components. It's $50,000 to settle the contracts and any other reserves we may need. It also includes $304,000 worth of overhead charges from water, sewer, and stormwater that we build them for administrative components, like finance, for Ed's time, for purchasing, and so forth. Before 2018, in 2017 and prior, some of those charges were counted as revenue, some of them were offsetting expenses. It was kind of a hodgepodge. So 2018 is the first time that we kind of grouped them all together and we set them up this way. So this will be our second year with that consistent accounting for that.
So basically, it's just a way for us to recover from our enterprise funds costs associated with the general fund,
Correct.
such as writing checks, personnel, financial accounting, those billing systems up in finance, those things. MIS.
Yep. You will also notice if you, oh, I'm sorry.
Can we go back to page 20 for a second?
Yep.
So under economic development, it has a 0 across the board for,
Yes.
that's because that funding for those
It
positions?
shifted down to the TIF budget.
Great,
We could
thank you.
probably delete that line
Okay,
item now.
Thanks.
As you're looking at some of the historical information from the regular wages, you'll notice that with Norm's retirement and purchasing, obviously, we hired more at the beginning of the pay scale. So we have almost $18,000 decrease in purchasing. We have a similar situation with the library administration budget due to retirement and attrition. We also have 16 active employees that have entered into the in-service drop program, or the in-service retirement program. And I believe Ed mentioned that during his presentation as well. What allows through contract language is them to retire from the city and come back and serve out a specific period of time, depending on what the contract language says, but their salary is reduced by 15%. So based upon the 16 active employees, We have a budgetary salary savings of about $160,000 for those individuals taking that. That pool is made up of 2 police officers, currently 1 MSEA position, although we have 2 more that are coming in at the end of the month, and 13 firefighters. The winter operations, regular salaries reflects a 3-year average, which is consistent with how we've budgeted there before. For the benefit, if we cut that salary, you're really just shifting it back to either highway or parks or something like that. You are not going to get tax dollar savings from that. This year, the social services budget reflects CDBG funding for one of the caseworkers' positions. In the past, we've kind of grossed that up and then took that as a budgetary adjustment at the council level. Because that's been funded so securely in the past, we went ahead and took that credit right from the get-go. Overtime, which you'll see runs from page 22 to 23. We have an overall increase here of just shy of $87,000, or 7.1%. Most of these obviously are attributed to the final contract settlements and anniversary increases. We do have a decrease in the election line item because it's an off-cycle season for the 2-year elections, 2 elections in 1 fiscal year. We have an increase in fire overtime of about $39,000 due to wage step. Also, the 4 new positions have required overtime replacement. So both of those increases, why you're not seeing a bigger number there, is because of the 13 firefighters that took the drop program. So it dropped that salary down by 15%. You will notice there's a decrease, or actually a credit, in the police. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I've done that, jumped ahead. That's in the temporary wages, so stay tuned on that one. We have looked at pretty much all of the overtime, and it's pretty well running where it should be. We're not seeing significant increases other than winter ops, which we dodged the bullet yesterday and today at least, so that helps. So looking at temporary wages on page 23.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So on street lighting,
yep.
is that increase so high because we're replacing all the LED?
Actually, that reflects what we've been incurring, actual incurred costs. If there's a traffic accident or something like that,
Okay.
that's what's driving that cost.
Okay.
And the insurance companies will not reimburse labor. They only reimburse the infrastructure.
Okay.
And I have a wish list item already.
Okay?
Elections line item. Do I give my reason now, or like?
That's up to you.
Okay, so I'm curious about reconfiguring the later hour election time. I've spoken with the city clerk about that, and ways to increase access to later afternoon voting.
Okay. Temporary wages fall on page 23. We have an overall decrease here of $16,278, or 6.7%. You have a similar reason in elections that you did with the overtime. There's only 1 election in this fiscal year, so you'll see that reduction in temporary wages. As I started mentioning in patrol, you have a $22,000 credit there. That reflects, we're actually budgeting for the billing that we do for outside details, and that's included in our budget. So that's what we've been averaging. We figure it's a nice conservative number, and we'll include it this year to move forward with that. The decrease in open space and tree work of $13,000, again, that's temporary summer help over the summer to look at mowing and maintenance of parks and so forth. This actually reflects the historical amounts that we've been incurring. They have trouble not only attracting people, getting them to stay the whole summer, getting them to work all the weeks. So it kind of reflects that budget for what we've actually been incurring. The increase of $13,000 in the armory is made up of two components. One is the building monitor for special events. They're having much more activity in the building, and that's not related to the activity funds, that's actually related to the armory. So he's put some wages in there to cover a building monitor during those times. Not to bring up a sore subject, but last year, as you might recall, we had some issues with the aquatics program and charging for that and so forth. So what we are doing, or what we're proposing this year, is obviously not charging for the aquatics program at all. We are budgeting $7,500 from general fund to supplement the aquatics program temporary wages. So it's not all of the temporary wages for the aquatics program, but it gives them at least that initial chunk, which is what he was budgeting for fees last year, transferred from general fund to balance that out. So I did want to highlight that.
Which line is that?
That is in the armory.
4519.
Yep, 4519, 125. I will point out, by eliminating that fee, it also eliminates the fee for any out-of-town people coming to use the pool. It completely eliminates the
No,
fee.
why is it linked with the armory,
Just because it's a general fund division.
which includes
It's
recreation?
part of the
It's part of the rec.
Right.
Yep.
That's what the armory is. So.
Yep. Library temporary wages, if you look at all of those different breakdowns for the library, we have the increase in minimum wage plus the increase in the expanding building monitor hours over at the library resulted in a just shy of a $9,000 increase for temporary wages across all disciplines at the library. Yep.
Another wish list item,
Yep.
gonna sound familiar, in elections, we talked about problems with recruiting temporary workers for those days, so just wanna look at that.
Okay. To cover the elections, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Our wage is low among municipalities.
Okay, for the wardens and so forth. Okay.
Not for the wardens, but for the clerks, election clerks, we have a lower wage comparative to other municipalities, it seems.
Okay, because we only hire 2 people for that, so those 2 part-time positions you're talking about,
The half-day and the full-day ones.
those are the warden and the work
They're
clerks?
wardens.
Yes,
not
okay,
clerks. Okay.
yep, the stipend
Because
position.
some of the folks who work elections get a stipend, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what she's talking about, yep.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that conversation, that I feel like that needs to be a bigger conversation when we're talking about the hours, like ways we could, instead of adding hours, maybe offsetting hours, so like Mondays are later but start later, do you know what I mean?
Yep. Kind of flexing that up a little bit. Okay. It will be on the list, and I'll let Kathy know. Other fees, which is kind of that one line item that you see right in the middle of page 23, we have an overall increase here of $12,000. This line item includes things like your board stipends, the audit fees, attorney fees, and so forth. That $12,000 increase is all attorney fees due to code and fire, kind of the condemnation stuff, consultations that we've been doing, and other legal matters that we've been incurring lately. Which brings us to fringe benefits that begin at the bottom of page 23 and continue to page 24. Overall, we have a $264,000 decrease in fringe benefits, or 3.1%. The first line that we'll talk about is severance pay. You will see that decrease by $347,000. As we talked about in Ed's budget presentation, $300,000 of that was coming from fund balance. So that's something that, we'll kind of look at when we review the final fund balance allocation to make sure everybody's comfortable with that. The next item is main PERS. That covers all of police and fire and those people that, the civilian employees that elect to take Maine PERS, our Maine State Retirement, as some of you may be more familiar with, had an increase of just shy of $68,000. The employer funding for the regular plan went from 9.6 to 10%. The public safety plan, which is the special plan, went from 10.1 to 10.5%. That's offset by about a $15,000 estimated savings for those employees that took the drop program. So we are seeing some benefits of that. Deferred comp and FICA increased slightly, or based upon the salary increase. Deferred comp increased by about $29,000, and FICA and Social Security and Medicare lumped together was about $9,600. Retirement health savings, we have a decrease there of about $28,800. That's due to a combination of salary adjustments and transfers for recent retirees and the drop program. Those are based upon certain sick and vacation balances depending on what contract you're in. So as we people retire and people start with the city, that line item will continue to decrease. The city pension plan had a slight decrease by $750. We only have one active pensioner on that plan now. We no longer need to fund the actuarial evaluation, so that's why you have that $750 decrease. Health insurance decreased by $176,000, or about 5%. That reflects all of the bargaining units transitioning from the POS to the PPO plan. And everybody's now paying the higher 15% employee contributions. We're projecting a relatively stable rate adjustment of about 8%. In the current year, we projected about 8%, and we actually incurred about a 5% rate increase. Questions? Okay, I'll keep humming. The insurance buyout, for those employees that do not either take health insurance at all, or they don't take the plan that they are eligible for. So if they're a family plan and they only take single, or if they're a family plan and they're on their spouse's coverage, they get 4 months of whatever that differential is. We are now seeing, especially with the public safety, when we're hiring our new officers and new firefighters, those individuals are still on their mom and dad's plan until age 26. So we are seeing a slight increase there with the insurance buyouts of about $160,000. And it's a combination of not only those plans, are those people taking advantage of that, also with the cost of insurance increasing, that's going to increase as well. The healthcare educator line item is about a $4,000 increase. That's the contract with the YMCA through the hospital that we participate. They do our healthcare educator screenings. They do the fitness assessments for the public safety. They provide the fitness center membership now that they can either go at the hospital or at the YMCA. And they provide various educational sessions throughout the year with us. So it's a good thing to have the increase that we're seeing is more employees are taking advantage of the gym membership. So we are looking at kind of reconfiguring how that rate will work and putting it on a fiscal year. I don't see it having a significant revenue option or offset option with this, but the increase is a good thing to have given what's driving it. Boston Mutual is a life insurance policy that essentially has a declining enrollment because that was sunset, I think, back when I started, which you don't want to know then. And so as those active employees retire, obviously the cost of that insurance is declining. So we have about a $4,700 decrease anticipated. It's closed to new enrollees, and that happened back in 1989. And right now, Once the active employee retires, it becomes a paid-up policy. So we continue that on. The flexible spending account is that healthcare, medical reimbursement and daycare. That has an increase of $15,750. That includes the increase of the employer contributions for the Public Works contract this year that was finalized of an additional $100 per employee. The health reimbursement arrangement had an increase of $9,200, reflecting the majority of the employees are now converted over, and we had the increase reimbursement or deposit from the employer going from $1,000 and $2,000 for family coverage to $1,200 and $2,400 for the family coverage. We're still looking at, because it's still a fairly new plan, and we've had a lot of people come on midstream. The plan has forfeitures, kind of a use it or lose it. We haven't gotten enough history in line to kind of truly see what our forfeiture rate is going to be. So we've still been rather conservative with what we anticipate with that.
Heather,
Yep.
why does it look like we overspent that line by a lot?
Because in a lot of contracts, if we settled a contract in March, let's say we funded a portion of the year and then we refunded that, I have to wait till the fiscal year ends to see what the forfeiture rates are.
Okay.
So I expect that by June 30th and after the run-out period, that'll fall back in line.
Okay.
Plus, you're also seeing the savings on the health insurance side. So we budgeted for the POS until some of the contracts got settled. And when that got settled, the insurance piece dropped, but this increased because we then funded the flexible, or the HRA. Workers' comp, that was another line item that was mentioned in the presentation. We are essentially flat funding that this year, but we are taking about $198,000 from fund balance to cover the unfunded liability. You might recall when the outside auditor was here to present the FY 2017 CAFR, that we had an unfunded liability that increased by about $490,000. So our unfunded liability for workers' comp is just shy of $3.5 million. So I've increased the mod rate. So we're self-insured, so I use the Bureau of Insurance rate by employee class. So like police, fire, the electrical division has a higher mod rate than me, who sits behind my desk, and hopefully the worst thing that happens is I get a paper cut. So what I've done is index that to kind of bump up that unfunded liability contribution amount this year, so hopefully we can start seeing a decrease in that. Unemployment compensation based upon historical average, that actually decreased $1,500. We are self-insured for that as well. And based upon, quite frankly, the historical average, we're not going through a layoff period, so our exposure there is pretty minimal. The other category, which is on page 24, reflects the billing that the municipal garage does to both other internal funds and customers, as well as external customers. So if you look at the first line, that billing journal entry, that's for internal billing. So that's billing for the police department work, from municipal garage to fire and so forth. If you're looking at the cash billing, that's what we're doing for other organizations. So you will see we had a decrease there of about $66,000, our 3.2%, and again, that's reflecting kind of what we've incurred. Right now, and I think Dave will agree, some of the work is having to be outsourced a little bit more based upon everything's computer-driven, chip-driven, and so forth. So you're going to see some of that decline continue in future years. You will notice beginning on page 25, and I will not go through each one of these, but you will have all the detail by division of what the positions are, what their annualized rate is at the end of 2017, what we're looking at for 2018. And you will see the range, you will see what bargaining unit they are in, what step. If you see a step that is separated by a backslash, that means they're changing steps this year. They have a step coming due. So that continues from that page clear through to page 30, no. They flipped too much. To 34. So other than the items on the election, does anybody have any questions on personal services, fringe benefits?
This includes all of the proposed new positions?
No, the new positions are not included in the budget at all. They're only on that list.
And similar to the question on health reimbursement arrangement, why it seemed to be overspent, under fire, and I believe overtime,
Yep,
we seem to be overspent through February 28th, and then next year's budget goes back to a smaller number.
that's correct. At the beginning of this fiscal year, there were several fire vacancies that remained unfilled. So those were all filled due to minimum staffing at an overtime rate. We are now, I think we're pretty much full staff right now.
Pretty much,
There may be one vacancy still.
Right, and there's also a period of time when you hire firefighters, and we hired 8 of them. It was either 7 or 8 that we
Yeah, I was gonna
hired all
say
at
8.
once. There's a period of time where they are not on regular shift until they complete their training. So when you have vacancies, you not only have to fill the vacancy with overtime slot, but for a period of time after that, as they're going through their training, you have to continue to use overtime. So it very much, fire is very dependent upon the overtime there depends on how many vacancies we have in a given year and how long it takes us to fill them.
And Councilor Markart, you might recall that I said towards the beginning of the discussion, 2018's number does not reflect the salary reserve allocation. Part of that allocation looks at all the surpluses and covers those deficits. So we will have a surplus in fire in regular wages because we had those vacancies. So part of that will be shifted down to their overtime budget. So if there are no more questions, on page 35, we'll talk about the capital items.
On positions, on ones that we want to keep on the list, is it, when are we going to be discussing that again? Or?
Yes, what I will do when we get into the department discussions, so like when we start talking about public works, I will revisit those positions again as they relate to the departments, if that works for you. Okay, all right. So on page 35, we have, and it continues to page 36, all the listings of the capital items and other one-time repair costs that were in this budget that the departments feel that they can get done within the next fiscal year that we have incorporated as part of a fund balance allocation, which means right now as it stands, there are no capital items being funded from the tax rate in FY 2019's budget. Everything's being taken from fund balance.
Can I
It's eligible.
Because what?
It's eligible.
It's eligible.
Is 4213 police?
4213 is police,
Okay.
yes.
And then, with all of these capital items included from fund balance, what would that, I'm sure you have it on here.
Yep, so if you turn to page 36, the total list that we're recommending is $2,064,060.
Yep.
You will notice there's that $84,000 difference. What the departments requested in the operating budget was essentially the $1,980,000. The $84,000 difference were items that were in the LCIP that I've moved over here. So they include like the balance of funding for the canal maintenance. We had some money in the fund balance. The LCIP had $46,000 more. I put that differential in here.
So anything in bold?
Anything in
Okay.
bold is that $84,000. So if you use that, and after you take into consideration the funding of the snowplow, a sidewalk snowplow, it brought us down to 13.9%. If we take all $2,064,060, it brings the fund balance down to 12.14%.
Great.
We've been kind of using that 10% as a sweet spot. So I gave, because I typically get the question, how much would it be to get down to 10%? We're about $2.5 million to get down to 10%. So that's the kind of, the point that the city administrator was making when we start looking at the LCIP versus capital, and if there's any others that we want to move over, that's kind of the number that we can reference when we're looking at doing that. So speaking of the LCIP, you'll find that on page 37.
What I was going, but before we get too far, there's an awful lot of stuff listed here. So, you know, if you have any questions about this now, fine. If you want to ask any questions about this at a later point, any of these projects, just let us know. Send Heather or I an email, and that way we can return to it and have more information about it.
Well, I have a couple questions now. So what is,
Okay.
what's 4217? Also police. I see
I'm sorry.
Brian waving his hand
Yep.
back there.
It's the police training room in the conference room upgrade.
And then 4552?
Is the library.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Would you find it helpful if we gave you a little cheat sheet that showed what these numbers relate to?
The divisions?
The divisions?
Yeah, that would be
Yep,
great.
I can do that.
That would make life a lot simpler.
so
You
my-
can tell it by going back into the rest of this, but it's
Right.
not easy.
So my question on the replacement of the wooden chairs is whether or not they're being damaged because they're wooden and there might be something more.
Those chairs that are
Durable?
being replaced are the chairs that were purchased when we first did the renovations
Okay,
at
so
the
it's
library.
just an age
They've
issue,
been a
it's not-
while,
okay.
exactly. Other questions? And I can send that updated schedule out. Looking at the LCIP, again, that was referenced as part of the budget presentation. Looking at city school together, because that's what goes against our 80% rule. We began the LCIP request with $15,095,820. We reduced it by just shy of $3 million, bringing it down to $12,133,000. We are still above the debt limit by about $5.1 million. So there's still a little work to be done with that. So Councilor Marcotte had emailed me regarding what the city administrator alluded to in his budget message about principal, whether we pay for the second principal this year versus next year. So I have the entire issuance, but I want to kind of focus on general fund if I could.
While we're waiting on that, Heather,
Yep,
on the LCIP Riverfront Island implementation,
yep.
I'd like to know when this comes up again, what is in that account currently and what we have on deck for projects on the riverfront with that money.
Okay. Yeah, the on deck's easy. It's the bridge.
Bridge.
I'll give you the amount that's in there.
You want to tell them about the bridge while we're on it?
We did have a bid opening yesterday? I think it
Yep.
was, I think it was yesterday. For the Beach Street Bridge, we had $600,000 scheduled. We had only one bidder that bid. He bid $1,060,000. Obviously, we don't have enough money right yet. We're looking at perhaps going back out in the fall. We think part of the reason for the increased cost is because of the tight time frame that we had. We got the bridge being delivered sometime in the middle of April. We needed to get the bridge done by the middle of June in order to meet the schedules for the summer activities that go on in the park and stuff. So what we're thinking about doing is starting a day after or 2 days after the Dempsey Challenge is done in the fall, and giving them some more time to be able to do it over the winter time and stuff. So maybe it'll get us some more bids. The other thing is, I think the folks that would normally bid, CPM Constructors is going to be doing the Lown Bridge. We were hoping they were going to bid on this one because it's right here. They had just gotten another big job as well, so they had their work pretty much tied up for this summer and this spring. Wyman and Simpson's another contractor that was interested, but they had just landed another job. All the contractors right now are really busy. In fact, Shane and I were just talking to two of them last night on different type of work and stuff, but they're basically saying everybody right now is really, really busy. So we're hoping if we delay this, go back out to bid later this summer for start of construction next fall, that we may be able to get more bidders and therefore actually bring the price down some, maybe use some of the money that we've got slated for next year to help supplement the money that we already got to make up any differences that we see, and hopefully we'll get that awarded so that we can get the job done sometime late next fall.
Was all of that money for that bridge that we had anticipated
Yeah.
from the riverfront
Yes.
implementation account?
Yes, yeah.
So I assume that there's more than 600,000 on hand right now, because you were projecting 600,000.
Yeah, we have $600,000 right now, so.
And putting it back out to bid, will you be changing the specs any other than the timeline?
We'll be looking at it. They came up with a couple of suggestions, the folks that did bid on it and stuff. We'll take a look and see if that's something we can work, change some stuff on or not. It may not be, but it may be primarily just a
Because going
timeline.
back out to bid with
Yeah.
the same specs
Yeah,
gives an unfair advantage to everybody else.
we'll be looking at a different time frame. So. Okay?
So, looking at the schedule that I just passed out with all these numbers on it, it says there's columns and numbers. One thing I want to preface this by is if we followed our normal bonding cycle, this would be a non-issue, because I would not normally sell until July or August of next year, or of this July or August, which would have already put that second principal payment in 2012, or 2020. The reason why we moved up the sale date to May is because there was a lot of encouragement from the council, the finance committee, the planning board, to take advantage of the interest rates. So what this scenario allows the city to do is get the best of both worlds. We will be able to sell in May and capture that interest rate, but this additional principal payment, or foregoing the principal payment in 2019, would be part of the normal city cycle. And you saw how it's not part of the normal city cycle in the jump on the increase on the tax rate as it stands now. So that's probably the easiest way to kind of get you to in that mindset. So you can see the fiscal year impact comparing the two options. I guess I would like to focus straight at the bottom. Is right now, if we have two principal payments this year, because that's the largest portion of that. The general fund tax rate is $16.99, ignoring all other changes that the council makes. This holds everything else constant. And the total tax rate is $29.14. Looking at kind of the deep geeky amortization schedule stuff that I look at, the average life of these bonds, which means the average life I'm paying these off, is the 7.64 years. So remember when we talked about we have a multi-pronged approach. We've been refunding, we've been taking advantage of the low interest rates, and we've been increasing our amortization schedule. That number used to be 15. So I'm pointing this out because as the interest rates keep rising and looking at the projects, particularly the fire substations coming down the pike, you will see this average life increase. There's just no way around that. The other thing is the TCI is the true interest cost, and we're anticipating that to be about 3%. You will see if we defer that interest payment, or defer the principal payment to 2020, we do have a little difference in savings and interest in the current year as well. So if you take both of those together, we are saving $732,000 out of the tax rate for FY19. That's that first positive number there. If you look at the two yellow boxes at the bottom, over the life of the note, so some of those are 20-year bonds, not all of them, but some of them, just for general fund, it's going to cost us about $130,000 more to do that over a 20-year period. You will see the average life of the bond goes from 7.64 to 8.31. Again, you defer it a year, you're not going to get the whole year because we're still ratcheting down, we're still making some interest payments and so forth.
And what was the savings again?
It's not, okay, let me clarify. There's a savings on the tax rate in next year of $732,000. It's going to cost over the life of the note to defer that one principal payment, $130,000 for general fund. And I have the other funds, but I want to focus on general fund right now. So the true interest cost stays about the same because, you know, the interest rates are still relatively low. And you will see it takes the general fund portion of the tax rate from $16.99 to $16.60. That's a 39-cent difference. It makes our overall tax rate just for the general fund side from the current year a 12-cent increase.
Say that last part again.
It takes the current general fund increase, ignore all other adjustments as it stands right now. If you approve this and then approve the budget as it stands right now, the general fund portion of the tax rate would increase by 12 cents.
Okay. And just to try to frame it from another perspective so that I can fully understand it, the nature of the email that I sent. So by going with the first principal payment in fiscal year 20,
Yeah?
we prevent ourselves from a $732,000 increase in next year's budget.
Correct.
But it will not, because this is what, on first blush, I was thinking, it will not create a bump in the next year?
No.
Okay.
That's where you see, and you'll see the negatives. I mean, they run about $22,000, which is normal. You will see larger bumps as you get to that differential between a 5-year project and a 10-year project. It's just shifting those down 1 year. Okay? And just so everybody knows, if you look at general fund city, or a city school, stormwater, water, and sewer, Under the same scenario, you have the same cash savings next year, but over the life of the note, when you look at what the city administrator's budget presentation, that was the $250,000 over all funds, 20 years. That was the additional interest cost.
So your recommendation would be to go with that first principal payment in 2020?
That would be a council decision.
What you're obvious, it's a very simple equation. You're looking at trading off a smaller, decrease, a smaller tax rate next year for some slight increases on an annual basis going forward.
Yes. And I guess I would start out, and not to be snarky to your question, but if we hadn't looked at capturing that May sale, we would have done what I'm proposing, or what that second group of numbers said, anyway.
Okay.
If that makes you feel better.
Is the finance division comfortable if the city council would agree with your presentation?
I am comfortable with that, yes.
Thank you.
So the impact would be, by deferring the payment, $6,500 a year, basically on $130,000.
Yep,
For the benefit of saving 39 cents on the mill rate.
correct. An immediate impact next year.
And it shouldn't have an impact on the mill rate in the following year.
It would,
Other
if
than
it
the
does,
$6,500.
if it does, it would be the normal matriculation of debt service. It wouldn't be,
Would be there either way.
right,
It'd only be the amount of the 6,500, which is probably a fraction of a penny.
correct. So, obviously, to be able to sell in May, I kind of need an idea, because we have to issue an official statement to get investors and take it to the bond rating agencies and so forth. Is it easier to say, is there anybody against this at this point? Okay, thank you.
I want to congratulate you on making such a big impact on the tax rate so quick in the process.
So, now that everybody feels really good. On page,
There will be bad news later, so.
God.
stop it, we're on a high. So, on page 48, we are starting with, there are kind of several divisions under,
Before we move on, sorry.
yep,
On page 37,
yep,
under the school department, it says Lewiston High School elevator, but when you look across, it gives you the totals.
yep. And there's a negative number? No, that's the parking lot.
No,
Okay,
Lines aren't
I
lined
think
up.
it's not lined up.
let me check that.
What is a missing line?
Right, I think there's no numbers for the elevator, or something happened there.
Okay, yes, I see what you're saying. I'll reprint that sheet.
Thank you.
Okay. So when you get to the Public Works divisions, Dave has money spread out all over the place. He starts with what's known as the general government property, which includes City Hall, the Violation Bureau, and the parking garages, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Then you jump to the divisions that you normally think of Public Works: highway, engineering, snow removal, and so forth. And then next Tuesday, we'll talk about the rest of his, which includes recreation, water, sewer, and stormwater. So people kind of know. The general government property starts on page 48. Overall, this category has an increase of just shy of $6,000, or a 1.51% increase. The new program and service relating kind of to this area is the contract snow plowing. The building maintenance division is recommending contract snow plowing for City Hall, Violations, library, and the police station. And that New program and service is estimated to cost an additional $11,500. Yep.
Is that due to lack of personnel at the Public Works?
It's really a cost avoidance is what we're looking at. I've got, the average age of my building maintenance workers are 57. We've got them out there with a snow blower, but getting it up and down and in and out of a truck at 57 years old, and that's the average. I think I meant to look to see what the youngest one is. I think he's 55. Most of them are in the 60s at this point, and quite frankly, we're just waiting for a workers' comp case and stuff. One injury, and those guys would more than offset that $11,500 would be paying a contractor to actually do that work for us, so,
I think that's a good decision.
yeah.
The other thing is, that's probably the biggest division through all of the attritions and reorganizations and layoffs the city's done over the years.
Right.
That's probably the division that has been hit the hardest.
Hard.
So even if we free up this labor, if you will, there are a multitude of back-burnered items that are waiting, you know.
And it could cost us more in workers'
Yep.
compensation.
And in fact,
Long-term.
that's one of the reasons that group is so old, is that when we've done reductions in staff, it's been the younger folks who didn't have seniority.
Correct.
And as Heather mentioned,
Thank you.
we've eliminated, what, a whole bunch of positions have been
At
eliminated.
least six. At least six that I can think of right off
And
the
we're
top.
left with, what, 4?
So I will put that on the list to kind of revisit when we go through general discussions. The City Hall had an increase of $13,367, or 10.4%. It's all in contractual services. We had one decrease, and that was in utilities, of about $4,600. The largest increase in contractual services is for cleaning. You will see this theme throughout all of the building accounts. Ed mentioned it as part of the budget workshop presentation, that as we've kind of let two custodial contracts let go, and we're trying to hire more people or extend more contracts, those are costing us more money because they are clearly the cost of doing these business buildings and the hours needed need to be bumped up. We also have,
Mike?
oh, sorry.
Maybe this question should have been asked earlier, but where you said it was an increase of about 13,300, well, I'm noticing that's the difference between the original 2018 and the recommended 2019.
Correct.
Can you explain the revised budget number, 2018?
The revised budget number includes those amounts the council approved from the previous year from fund balance.
Okay. And I'm trying to get ahead of myself here. You're moving on to Violations Bureau, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Give me like
I'll wait.
2 seconds. I'm fast, but I'm trying not to go that fast. So the other thing that you'll have is the repairs to equipment. That was the other kind of big jump for about $3,700. Again, this is going to be a theme for all of the building accounts. Currently, they only replace the HVAC system filters once a year. They're looking at doing that twice a year to improve ventilation, circulation, breathability within the buildings. So that is a jump, and again, there's going to be a theme through the other buildings because they all have it programmed. We have a $3,500 repairs to building increase, and again, that's for interior painting of the building to kind of bump that up because it's been a while since some of the offices and so forth have been painted. Supplies is relatively flat, reflecting traditional uses. So now, moving on to the Violations Bureau. Do you have a question?
No, I just want to say that the cleaning service in the building has been like exceptional, so whoever the new cleaning service is.
Yes.
This new contractor
Yes.
we've got, we're really pleased with.
And they're very,
And he's still
good
trying to
customer
make
service.
improvements, so.
yep.
so.
So the Violation Bureau, as it stands, had a decrease of $7,376, or just shy of 17%. I will note, however, we got the official word after this document was kind of put together that the State Judicial Department will not be renewing the lease on the building. So their lease extends through December 2018. So one of your first council adjustments that you're going to see is a decrease or a cut in the lease revenue for the Violations Bureau. They are planning on leaving the building in May of this year. So, but they'll at least continue their lease payments until December, which is when their lease expires. So right now, we have certain things in the budget. It's one of those things we may revisit along with other council adjustments to kind of keep bare bone functioning there. Obviously, we're going to keep the utilities on. We may do minimal cleaning there and so forth until we determine and you determine what you want to look for purposes for that building.
Did they give a reason for not renewing?
They're expanding some of their operations, mainly, I don't want to call it a call center, but essentially they are moving some of their other operations from other locations around the state into their Lewiston location. So they were looking at a possible renovation of our building to absorb that, and in their search and kind of review of all that, they found another building that really fit their needs perfectly, essentially is the way they put it to me. It was actually a former call center, and it was structured the way they needed it to, and there was no renovations needed. That was it.
So the operation will be staying in Lewiston, just no longer in our building.
So how many square feet is that, will that, you know?
I can get the
yeah.
information for you, but I don't have it off the top of my head, but.
The question I had was, when did we come by the building? Why do we own it?
All I know is we've owned it since I've been here, and probably since Dick started, but definitely for that piece of time. I can kind of see when it began, but I'm not sure. I could email Dick and see if
It was
he's
the
got
old
the
courthouse,
institution.
right?
Yeah.
Which the court used to be this room right here, so I would assume we bought it.
Right, and then it moved there, and then when they did the court, they kept the violations, is the way I understand it, but I don't,
So
not
that's probably
sure
why
how
we
it
owned it, because we
started.
needed this room, so we kicked him out.
So,
And I assume that we're turning a profit between the rent and the expenses.
Correct.
Because I was going to suggest otherwise, we look to sell the building.
yes, so, but yes, we were,
It has been a fairly reasonable source of revenue. Although, we were also at the point where we were going to have to start putting some money back into the structure.
Well, I thought I saw a roof repair somewhere along the way.
Yeah, we've done a variety of smaller things, and Dennis, in these conversations with them, there was a lot of discussions with them as to the improvements that they wanted in the building. Some of those may have been to accommodate what they were looking at as an expansion. Some of those you're starting to talk about, you know, replacing carpets and doing some, what I'll call minor structural kind of work on the building. And I think some of that was in the LCIP, right, Dennis?
$136,000.
536.
136. And we've already moved removed that from the LCIP.
But we will have to decide what we want to do with the structure.
So all of the decrease that you see in expenditures right now, again, they fall in contractual services, and we're looking at the decrease of the cleaning operations there, the utilities and so forth, to kind of, not essentially totally mothball it, but really close to that. The Oak Street parking garage, which is on the bottom, or the last section of page 48, we have an overall increase there of just under $2,500, or 5.89%, or 98%. Again, that is all in contractual services. We have increases in utilities there of about $1,700 due to projected CMP increases and to have the full implementation of the sewer and stormwater increases that we did in FY18. By the time those rate increases were approved, Those budgets did not necessarily reflect all of them, and they are adjusted fully for this year. So you will see those, again, a common theme of all the parking garage had that impact. You're also looking at repairs to equipment for about $1,100, given actual cost incurred. And repairs to grounds, they had $1,000 to grass seed and fertilize around that parking garage. It's been requested for several years now, and every year we kind of remove it from the budget, but it's really getting kind of crusty over there. That was offset by a $1,000 decrease in repairs to buildings based upon routine items. All of the non-routine tasks were moved to the fund balance. The Canal Street parking garage had a decrease of $161, or 0.7%. Again, it's in contractual services that you had offsetting adjustments with the utilities. And the repairs to equipment, and then you had other decreases, minor decreases in the other accounts to offset that. Nothing really outstanding there. You have the Chestnut Street parking garage. Again, that's falling on the middle of page 49. We have a decrease there of $5,445, or just shy of 15%. And that was all in contractual services. So the increases in utilities, which in this particular case was a little under $700, and the repairs to equipment were offset by decreases in the telephone line item and then the outside rental. With this particular account, outside rental is the snow removal fees for the parking garage. There was $5,000 that was removed and reallocated to the Lincoln Street parking garage for plowing of Mill Street. So there is a shift in that, so that you will see when we look at the outside services for Lincoln Street. You're going to see the offset to that. So you'll see that jump there. And then we had a decrease of $1,100 in repairs to buildings, again for the routine items. All the non-routine items were moved to fund balance. Just as a reminder for some of the new counselors here, the land lease here is with the LA Railroad Company for the Lincoln and Cedar Street parking lot. The Southern Gateway, which falls on the bottom of page 49, had an overall decrease there of just under $3,600, or 5%. Contractual services here had a decrease of $4,350. And again, you had some netting there. We had the increase in utilities for $650 and repairs to equipment for $300. That was offset primarily by outside rental of $2,000 based upon snow removal costs at Southern Gateway. We don't need to do as much work down there based upon the garage utilization. We also have a $2,600 decrease in repairs to buildings based upon historical and moving the non-routine stuff to fund balance. Lincoln Street is on the top of page, or actually, let me talk a little bit about the land lease there too. We have
In Southern Gateway.
Southern Gateway, sorry. An increase of just shy of $800. That land lease is with Franklin Trust. It's a 50-year lease, and it has a lease. It had a lease escalator 10 years into the lease, and then it escalates every 5 years after that. So we are on that 5-year increment now. So now we'll move to Lincoln Street parking garage on page 50. We have an overall increase here of $6,500, or 16.23%. Again, that's all in contractual services between utilities for about $600, repairs to equipment, sweeping services for $300, and then this is that offset for the outside rental. In this particular case, it's $6,000 that we just moved over from that other parking garage. And then we had a $1,000 increase because of additional plowing around the Lincoln Street parking garage. We have repairs to grounds here of $1,000 as well, to seed and fertilize around that. And then we had other minor increases, particularly in repairs to buildings. Questions on the general government property? If not, we can flip to page 59. So Public Works, in this particular section, Public Works had an increase of $350,000, or 5.8%. Again, we kind of already focused on the capital outlay portion and the personal services portion. So I'll tend to hone in on the contractual services and supplies. Again, new programs and services here. We had a request for 3 additional full-time employees, and these are in priority order. We have the senior principal clerk, we have the municipal garage equipment servicer, and we have a building maintenance worker. And then we have the 2 part-time building maintenance positions. I'll spend a little bit of time on the senior principal clerk just because it's probably something both Dave and I at least agree passionately about. One of the restructurings we did during the recession is the prior administration had brought the Public Works business office over to City Hall. I think overall it's worked because we've gained a lot of efficiencies. When people are paying bills, they can kind of pay all bills, one-stop shopping. When we're looking at collecting balances, we can collect kind of all balances at once and get to know who our accounts we need to babysit and watch a little bit more than others. The problem with that is it left a clerical hole at the Public Works facility. They've managed fairly well overall, I think, with the exception of the senior principal clerk that currently does payroll. She is approaching retirement. She could retire. She is eligible to retire at any point in time. Public Works payroll is not the easiest payroll to do. You have a lot of shift differentials. You have a lot of costing of projects for the capital projects, for the bonds, for the different divisions. You have
A lot of overtime.
we probably use 175 different overtime and comp time codes to track the work that they're doing down there. So to say I worked a regular week is great, but what did I work it on? And so you have to allocate, you have to assemble those manual pieces of paper from the foreman and key it in such a manner that it's getting charged out and so forth. We have tried to cross-train some of the individuals, but obviously they have full-time jobs as well. So it's definitely left that void there, that with this position, and we can give you more details in the new program and service write-up, with this addition to this position, it provides that natural succession planning if this person were to retire. It also provides some additional clerical and administrative support in some of the items that they just haven't been able to get to. If they wanted to look at, meeting minutes for the PW committee, all of those things, this would definitely be beneficial to that. It also could provide clerical support for the payroll clerk in the recreation department as well when she goes on vacation and so forth. So is there anything that I forgot that?
Well, the only thing I will say is part of the agreement when we consolidated the business office from Public Works over into finance is that the backup for this person would come from finance and stuff. It's gotten to the point where Heather's folks just don't have the time or ability to provide that backup service anymore and stuff. And we kind of realized that about a year ago. Quite frankly, we've been scrambling for a little over a year trying to figure out how best to get this resolved and stuff. So by having this additional person there ready to go, and Sue has done a remarkable job keeping track of the payroll and doing all the things that she does do. She's had a little bit of health problems here recently and stuff, and she's getting up there and ready and starting to think about retirement, which quite frankly scares the hell out of me, trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to get all my guys paid, quite frankly. This is something both Heather and I think we need to do something here. And this is a position we think may be the best way to go, so.
Is this part-time or full-time?
Be a full-time position.
Could you get away with a part-time to start?
It's difficult
Yeah.
to attract
Somebody that could be able to do the work.
and
stuff,
provides
so.
the continuity.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not something you can train somebody in 2 months. We are exploring one kind of option that we need to dig into a little bit more that may kind of be a hybrid position. But we'll kind of evaluate that a little bit more and bring it back during the general workshops. So having said that,
You want to have Dave cover the other ones? Are we all set on the other
We're all-
position?
I mean,
priority order, so.
yeah, I can, I've gone through each of the each of the things that we had listed on the unfunded new services list. I've got a summary of each one of them and put it in priority order for you. If you'd like to have the information, I'll be happy to hand it out. I think it takes some time for you to actually go through and read what the justifications are, so.
Yes, that'd be great.
What I'll do is, I'll just hand this out to you, take your time and go through it, and we can revisit any of it at some point later on.
Well, the other thing is, if there are any that, if you happen to look at it over the weekend and you want to put any of the items on the list, we can do that next Tuesday, because we're going to continue Public Works next Tuesday during the workshop.
Yeah.
That would be a great time to do that.
The Public Works Committee will also be looking over these
Okay, great.
staffing in the next
Yes.
couple weeks, so
Uh.
by the end of the budget, we'll have a recommendation
Right.
on all of these.
Right.
Great.
Council.
Perhaps a silly question, but, so senior principal clerk, is there just a principal clerk level that might be at a slightly lower salary level?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And those are union positions. They fall under the general government MSCA union contract.
Okay, I'll take a look at that, thanks.
So looking at Public Works Administration, that falls on page 59. We had an overall increase there of a little over $2,700 or 1.8%, and that pretty much was all in salaries. Salaries increased by $3,700. We had minor decreases in contractual supplies and fixed charges. The engineering department had an overall increase of literally just shy of $5,000 or 3.83%. We had $8,800 worth of increase in personal services. We did have increases in contractual obligations here. This is one division that gets charged out to a lot of projects. So depending on what projects are coming into the next fiscal year, you see some fluctuations in the project charge out line item with that. You had a decrease of $4,800 or $4,900 in contractual services with minor reductions in mileage and subscriptions. The vehicle rental was $1,300. For the benefit of the new counselors, when you see vehicle rental account, that is an all internal account. So municipal garage owns all the equipment. They turn around and rent, like Dave's truck to him in administration, they rent the vehicles that the engineering department uses, and they get charged that vehicle rental account. So if you cut this vehicle rental account, you will cut that journal entry that we saw in personal services. It has no impact on the tax rate.
Right. It's a wash.
So just so you know, if you start seeing jumps in vehicle rentals, those are based upon average. But even if we reduce them, we're gonna have to reduce the offset revenue, if you will, in municipal garage.
Right.
So there will be no impact on the tax rate. When you look at outside rental, that's when you're talking truly outside of the organization. That will have a tax rate increase or decrease impact. So looking at that, the biggest jump in I'm jumped down to highway. Let's look at engineering again. So we have, maintenance and licensing was probably the biggest portion of the increase in contractual services. And that's due to allocating, some of the GIS stuff to the other funds. They have, a lot of what you see on the website and so forth. Particularly in the utility funds, you will see them using that software and the licensing more, so they get a greater allocation from that. Supplies increased about $1,300. We had printing there for about $790. They buy rolls of plotter paper. They are replacing a roll of plotter paper. They are out of that particular size, as well as department apparel had an increase of $355. You will see that increase throughout all of Public Works. The boot allowance, the employee boot allowance increased as part of the contract settlement. So all of the apparel line items will be increasing as a result of that. And you had a slight decrease in fixed charges of $320. It's an off year for the biennial public engineering license for a lot of them. Highway starts on page 59 and continues to page 60. We have an overall increase here of $83,356, or 5.15%. $55,000 of that increase is all in personal services. Contractual services increased by $27,600. Of that, utilities increased about $6,600 due to the CMP, and then again, their water and sewer rate increase. The other big ticket item here was $20,915 due to street lining. Even though we had some minor decreases in the price per paint, we had increase in cost in the actual beads, as well as the number of markings had increased, and the contractual labor for that to be applied has increased.
That's our crosswalks that we're doing, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Supplies increased by a little over $1,000. $1,100 of that was that department apparel due to the boot allowance that you saw. Everything else was pretty much minor in nature. I will highlight, though, we did have a decrease in the public safety supplies for about $1,200. Again, that was based upon historical usage. Any one-time cost have been moved into the fund balance. And then fixed costs decreased about $400, and that's all in meal pay estimates. Winter operations. We have an overall increase here of $108,230, or a little over 9%. $45,000 is in personal services, and again, that's just shifting labor from highway to this, or from parks to this, and so forth. We do have some increases in overtime here as well. That's pretty much because we've been having a streak. It seems like all the storms are falling on at night or on the weekend.
Especially on Sundays.
Yes, so.
Sundays are really bad days for snowstorms.
The first thing I wake up on Sunday, I'm like, oh, this is gonna cost us. So,
Never on Sunday.
Never on Sunday. We don't like,
The overtime wages are more than the regular wages.
yes,
Yes.
because of the Sunday storms
Yeah.
particularly.
Well, you stop and think about it, and if you're plowing for 16 hours, the most you're gonna have is, 8 for regular hours, and you're gonna have 8 for overtime hours, so
And it's
virtually,
time and a half or double.
yeah, virtually every time we go out, we're gonna be into overtime more often than not for the majority of the time that they're out.
And I mean, look at Christmas and Christmas Eve this year. That was a huge storm. So it's just the way Mother Nature has been landing on some of the storms.
If we could
that's
schedule
very
it all between 7 in the morning and noon, so that we could get everybody out when they came on duty and have half a shift to clean up at the end of the storm, life would be good, but it just doesn't cooperate with us that
Nope.
way.
So the cost of increase.
Live in Florida.
Yeah. The increase in contractual services is about $43,000. That's all internal vehicle rates. We've gotten some new plow trucks and so forth. Those rental rates have increased because obviously they're newer vehicles. Supplies increased about $19,000. It's all for increases in road treatment material. We've had general price increases in pretty much all of them, as well as we need to replace the inventory on our liquid calcium chloride and look at replacing some of the sandboxes throughout the city that we did not do this year.
And just again, we do this based on a 3-year average, so it kind of depends on the last 3 years. It seems like the snow has been getting heavier again.
Yep.
I know I still remember the first year I was here, the last snowstorm was New Year's Eve. And had a very good year that year. It seems like things are moving in the other direction, so.
And the last category in this particular division is the fixed cost. That rose by $1,020. That's for meal pay. The contract says if they have shifts that extend after 8 consecutive hours, they get paid a meal pay in accordance with that contract. That's basically the 3-year average, but the cost of the meal pay in this particular contract increased by $1 per meal. So you're seeing not only the average increase, but the cost per meal increased as well. Sidewalks is all funded through fund balance, so we have no operating funds associated with sidewalks this year. Streetlights, which is on the top of page 51, has an overall decrease of $173, or 0.3%.
0.03%.
0.03%. So we have personal services that increased by $11,750. Again, that's contract and overtime. We are finally seeing the benefit of all our replacement of street lighting. So we had a decrease in contractual services of $12,700. $19,000 of that was in utilities, which offset the increase in vehicle rental of about $2,000 and repairs to singles of about $4,000. And we had a minor increase in supplies of about $800, and that's based upon that other supplies, the historical usage that we've incurred in cost. The waste and recycling collection, the kind of little division that's on page 61 in the middle there, had a decrease of $6,800 or 0.83%. So the bulk of that was in contractual services based upon the contract that we just entered into that's good through 2019. We've got really favorable rates on that. And then waste disposal itself, which continues on to page 62.
And that's basically the landfill.
Yep. Just about broke even on this account. It had a small increase of $714. Personal services actually decreased in this area based upon attrition and highway cross-charging. We had contractual services that increased by $619. We had increases of just shy of $6,000 in utilities due to the electricity primarily, and miscellaneous services of $2,100. That's for the custodial services. We're starting to see that theme with the buildings. And we have a new line item for rodent and pest control there for about $600. And the maintenance agreement for the scale house also increased as well. Those were offset by reductions in the regulatory compliance, the repairs to equipment of about $2,000 based upon unit usage, and then the internal and external vehicle rental charges of about $3,200. And household hazardous waste, that's based upon volume, and the way the numbers are trending now, we're anticipating about a $3,100 decrease in that line item. Supplies was essentially flat, and we had about a $200 increase in fixed charges. We're looking at having another one of our employees join the solid waste professional membership and become more involved in that group. Open space and tree work. It's the middle of the page on 62. Had an overall increase there of $18,400 or 2.17%. Pretty much all of that was in salaries. We had an $18,000 increase there. The $31,000 increase in wages for regular employees was offset by the $13,000 reduction in temporary wages that we discussed earlier tonight. Even though contractual services was relatively flat funded, we had offsetting fluctuations there. So we had increases in utilities. Again, that's that common theme there of $2,400. Vehicle rental rates increased by $4,300. They're repurposing an internal vehicle for the summer help. So we see the internal charges increase, but we'll see the external charges decrease. Repairs to grounds increased by about $1,200. Tree maintenance, because of the storms and so forth and the number of dangerous trees we have out there, we're increasing that by just shy of $4,000. Downtown maintenance had a small increase of about $950. And again, we reduced the outside rental that we were renting from Jim's Rent It and so forth of about $12,000. I think that was for not only the bucket truck, but the temporary trucks, the laborer trucks as well.
What we've done is we bought a new lift truck for electrical, and we are using the older one now for tree work for as long as it will continue to pass the required inspections and can keep using it. We don't know how long that's going to be, because it is getting up there in age. It's not exactly a pretty
Well, and we're trying to do as little maintenance on it as possible, but at the same time, keep it running and saving some money by doing that, so.
Yep. Supplies in this division had a slight increase of about $200. We had offsetting adjustments there. Other supplies increased by about $700. Fertilizer and grass seed and so forth decreased the small tool allowance to kind of hold that category in line. And then the increase in the fixed charges were meal pay. There are two kind of sidebar notes I'd like to make with this division. You will see kind of halfway through this division on page 62, the forestry board expense and then the tree bait program. So the forestry board was a board that was formed when we did some timber cutting. There was a policy developed that a portion of the timber harvesting revenue was set aside to fund this forestry board. We eliminated, when I first started here, we had a 50-50 tree program. That program was also eliminated in lieu of developing this board. We have the Community Forestry Board that has funding that they approve for their resources. Right now, as of June 30th, 2017, they had about $21,600 there. They spent about $6,500 to date. Last year, we had the tree bait program started, and that was kind of offsetting the stormwater increase to kind of promote taxpayers, residents, and so forth to plant trees to help with stormwater runoff and so forth. The amount that was approved for fund balance funding was $60,000. That included not only rebates given, but also to market the program. To date, we've spent about $1,900 on marketing, and what we've done, we've developed flyers, posters, we've put it on the website, we've done
Bill inserts.
quarterly billing inserts for the water, sewer, and stormwater bills and so forth. And we've done that at the end of last year, and we've continued it through this year. So again, that's about $1,900 to date that's been spent on marketing. We've only had one rebate issued for $100. So right now, that would be a great thing to kind of get the word out.
We could do a commercial during the council meeting.
Exactly.
Do
And
a
we do
recess, we'll put
have,
the tree bait thing up.
if you need information, we do have the program flyers up in the hallway on the second floor. So feel free to, if you're in the building, swing by and grab them, or just shoot me an email and I'll bring them down to the council meeting so you guys can pass them out as well. Hydroelectric is at the top of page 63. We have an overall increase there of $1,100, or 2.17%. Right now, the city of Auburn reimburses us 17.7% of this budget due to a cost-sharing arrangement. The cost-sharing arrangement is not continued in this budget based upon settlements of the canal and the Monte Hydro not producing and so forth. So,
You can all look forward to a press release tomorrow about the status of the ownership of the canals.
so personal service makes up all of the increase there. Contractual service is essentially flat. Any increase in utilities was offset by a decrease in repairs to buildings. Municipal garage is on the bottom of the page. That had an increase of $121,244, or 40.46%. So we had a decrease in personal services of about $38,000 between increases in regular and overtime, offset by those external and internal billing charges. So that's a little bit kind of misleading because it's really offset by the revenue of about $66,000. We have an increase of $5,685 in contractual services. That's kind of made up of a bunch of different things. So we have your increase in the uniform rental of about $900 for boot allowance. We have an increase of $5,000 in repairs to vehicles. And again, that's just general cost increases. Miscellaneous services increased by $17,000. That's probably the biggest ticket there. We had the service agreement on the GPS program for $15,000. And that's because we instituted the GPS this year. This is our first maintenance and licensing agreement with that.
That's for the GPS system in the vehicles.
Correct. It also reflects an increase in what's known as the RTA system. That's our vehicle maintenance system out there of about $1,900. Those increases were offset by reductions in outside services for $2,400 based upon body work that's anticipated in sandblasting and painting and so forth that had decreased. And repairs to equipment decreased by $15,000 based upon actual usage, and we're starting to see the benefit of replacing some of our old equipment out there. Supplies increased by $153,000, of which $138,000 is due to increases in gas and diesel prices. We are looking at locking in probably next week. So depending on what the final lock-in price, I will be bringing back a potential adjustment. Hopefully it's a positive adjustment and not a negative adjustment from the gas. So we're looking at, just to kind of give you a gauge where it is now. Currently we were at $1.63 for gas and $1.78 for diesel. We've programmed $2 for gas and $2.25 for diesel. So that obviously makes up the lion's share of that jump. Tires rose by $13,500. Unit 501 needs all new tires for that amount of money, so I assume that's a loader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh? And
Loader tires don't come cheap.
no,
Right, Mike?
that's about $4,600 with that. The public buildings account which is on page 64 at the top, have an overall increase there of $16,000 or 6.31%. $19,000 was in personal services. We have a decrease of $2,800 in contractual. The vehicle rental charges decreased by $2,100 due to the depreciation of the new vehicle. And miscellaneous services decreased by $790. And supplies, again, we had minor offsetting decreases there of $300 for small tools and the cost of the apparel for boot allowances. And it's an off year for our public engineer license in that particular division as well. Public Works buildings had a decrease of just shy of $2,000 or 1.25%. It's all in contractual. We had about a $1,000 decrease in utilities based upon historical usage, and about $2,800 in repairs to buildings. Again, that's the routine portion of the repairs to buildings. Any special projects were moved to the fund balance. That was offset by increases of about $2,000 in custodial services. And we had a minor decrease in supplies there. City-owned property had an increase of $2,500, or almost 31%.
And pray tell, what is city-owned property?
City-owned property is all that land and parcels that we have owned throughout the years, tax acquired and so forth. No matter how many times we may go out to bid for a particular parcel and nobody wants it, we're still stuck with it. So that includes things that have stormwater primarily. We do have one particular parcel that we have to do our prorated share of snow plowing of a private road and some other things. So that all is reflected in that city-owned property. The list that you approved Tuesday night, we're hoping to get those all released and on somebody else's ownership prior to April 1st. It's going to be close, but that's the goal. So that'll help, obviously, the more we do, that'll help this particular division in the long run.
These are basically orphan properties.
Yeah,
that
really.
no other department has a claim to, and I end up getting.
And mowing.
And mowing, and doing whatever I need to do with it, so.
So that pretty much covers Public Works. The Heather Hunter Cliff Note version of the 2019 budget.
This might be the easiest Dave has ever gotten off.
He's not done
Does it
yet.
every year. She's been doing great.
Are you saying this is the mini version of Public Works this evening?
No.
This is a portion of Public Works.
Yes.
You're gonna hear the rest of it on Tuesday.
On Tuesday. So, just a reminder, if, I know we kind of went through this, and as you go through it again, if there are just, Heather, remind me what happened in this particular line item, just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to address them. If there's more information on anything that you might want to need that I can dig up from the department standpoint, and I know Dave's been really great about, working and digging through and providing details. As a reminder, again, we have the school committee meeting at 6 o'clock Monday. Tuesday, we have recreation, rec activity, and water, sewer, and stormwater. And Thursday, we have police, the drug forfeiture account, fire, social services, TIF, and community development.
And Saturday, we have the council retreat.
Not this Saturday, though, next.
Week from Saturday, yes. Next week is the killer. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
I might have to bring brownies for Thursday, just to keep everything going.
Saturday.
And if you come up with any questions on
Yeah.
Public Works, send me an email too, and I'll
Yeah,
find it.
this is really an opportunity, if you have any other questions about Public Works, any other issues that you want to address as part of the budget process related to Public Works, please bring those to our attention so we can work to put information together and get it back to you.
There's a lot of stuff we went through quickly here tonight.
Yes.
So don't feel like you're burdening us if we, and I don't have answers right on the top of my head to everything either, so some of the
But
stuff
Heather
I'll have to
does.
look up, so.
Dave may not have answers, but Heather does.
I will admit that I don't have answers.
And thank you for making the kind of general decision on the debt service. That helps move that along. And I will keep you posted on how the bond sale goes.
That's it.
No. Have a
Excellent.
good evening.
Workshop over.